How's business? Are you doing as well as you'd like to do or even need to do? Do you feel you're in a holding pattern where you know you need to make certain changes but you're not quite sure how to go about it? Are competitors making inroads on your market share and your customers? Well, there are three basic questions that you can ask yourself to get started. Where am I now? Where do I want to be a year from now? And how am I going to get there? So stick around and we will help you with a roadmap to future success. Let's play Main Street Marketing Challenge. Main Street Marketing Challenge is a cybercast that pinpoints the goals of business owners and suggests solutions so that you can better navigate today's fast-changing media and advertising landscape. I'm Bruce Apar, and with me is Bruce Mishkin, and we are Pinpoint Marketing and Design, and we produce the show and bring it to you. And you can also see it on YouTube. You can see past shows on YouTube by searching for Main Street Marketing Challenge. And if you're in a Cablevision system, you can see it on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. on your local public access challenge. So, Bruce, what's our marketing challenge today, as they say on the quiz shows?
Well, the marketing challenge really is how to increase your revenues, how to grow your business.
Right.
Especially in the face of competition.
Yes, right. And speaking of that, speaking of competition, if any of the viewers are wondering, why is this guy, meaning me, wearing that hat in a TV studio, there's a purpose to my wearing the hat, especially for this particular subject matter that we're going to be discussing. And that is, as Bruce just started to explain, you have to think about how do you look to the marketplace and to consumers compared to the competition. So this is one way of illustrating that, and that is, if you asked why is he wearing a hat, that was the point. The point is to stand out, to do something that looks different, and to make people actually curious and inquisitive, right? About what is it about that business that
is different?
Right? Yeah. That's going to provide value to me as a customer, right? It's that type of thing. And so, Bruce has prepared a marketing workbook that we're going to start, at least on this show, to talk about and to go through. We may not get through the whole thing, but then we'll just pick it up on the next show. In that event. And so why don't we start doing that, Bruce? I mean, at the outset, I mentioned asking people watching, business owners and operators watching, do you feel that competitors, for example, maybe are eating into your market share? So for starters, we should talk about market share and what exactly that is and why it's really important, right? For a business to know their market share and to know where they want to take it. Right.
Market share, well, if you had a business in which you were the only one of its kind, then you would have, and nobody else did what you do, then you'd have 100% market share. And you can also think in terms of Google versus Bing. And what's Google's market share of searches versus Bing? And right now, about 70% of searches take place on Google, and about 25-30% take place on what's called the Bing network, which up until recently has also included Yahoo. So the market share of searches for Google is 70, and it's 25-30 for Bing.
But doesn't that, I just want to mention, again, by way of illustrating for viewers what we're talking about, is my reaction to that is Bing has made some significant inroads.
They have.
Because what was Google's market share before? Was it virtually 100%?
It always hovered around 65 or 70%. Interestingly, in Europe, Google's market share is 90%.
Okay, right.
And that I don't know for certain, but I don't believe Bing operates outside of the US, although I'm not sure.
Okay, so in that case, again, for the purposes of illustrating to the audience how this could apply to them. So you're saying originally Google's market share was 70%. So does that mean Bing took market share from somebody else?
Well, don't forget when Google started, there were other search engines
That's what
as
I'm
well.
saying. Right, that's what I mean.
So it's
Right.
it's the shares shifted, but Google has remained just about the same, no matter who their competition has been during this period of the last 15, 16 years.
But again, the point is that Bing took it from somebody.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to talk about.
And Bing took it from Google.
Right.
Okay. But market share also is if you're in a business, let's say it's an HVAC company that does heating and air conditioning.
Yes. Right.
Okay. And you're in, let's say in your area, you have 6 other companies or 5 other companies that provide exactly the same services that you do.
Right.
You have to look at your position versus your competitors and say to yourself, well, what is my share of the market? Okay, so for instance, out of the 6 competitors, one may be very strong. One may be consistently have been hard for you to beat. And it may be that among 6 competitors, one competitor has a 40% market share. And among the 5 other competitors, 60% of the market share is split among those 5 people. So that's a situation where one company in an area, in a service area like HVAC, is dominating the market. So that the other competitors have a much smaller piece.
Which by the way, we're not going to get off on this at all, but it's hard for me to resist, especially with the example you just used, that it evokes a certain current presidential primary contest where one of the candidates, let's say, gets 40%, then there could be 5 or 6 other candidates who have to share
their share. Yeah. So John Kasich might have 5, Marco Rubio who has since dropped out, had 9, et cetera. So there is an example if you look at the candidates as products.
Yes, right, which they are.
They are, as Donald Trump has dominated the market share. It has the largest market share.
Right.
And in any business where there's competition, there is your share of market and your competitor's share of market.
Which always adds up to 100%.
It always adds up to 100%, but one thing you have to ask yourself is what price market share?
Okay.
In other words, are you willing to gain customers, to take customers away from your competition? Are you willing, for instance, to lower your prices?
Right.
Okay?
Cut your margins, right? Profit margins.
Cut your margins, perhaps make up for it in volume, but maybe not.
Right.
And so you've cut your prices and maybe increased your share, but you enter a point of what an old boss of ours used to call profitless prosperity.
Yeah,
right?
You read my mind. Right. Profitless prosperity.
So that's what you want to avoid. People don't necessarily buy on price alone. Some do, some don't. Some look for quality. Some look at reputation. There are so many factors that go into making a decision on who to choose when there are 5, 6, 10 choices out there.
Right. But also, Bruce, isn't it a very legitimate strategy, if it's well researched and planned, to buy, as you're saying, you buy market share, and you might have to cut your margins during that process of buying market share, but then once you have it, you try to fatten those margins. Right.
You can do that, but the point is, what you have to ask yourself when looking at the competition, and again, going back to where am I now? Where do I want to be a year from now, and how am I going to get there? Well, maybe you're in a position where in a market you have competitors that have a 40%, a 30%, a 20%, and you are last in the market, let's say. Or you're number 2, you're number 4 out of 5 competitors. So your market share may be 6%, and one of your competitors has 36% market share. So the question you have to ask yourself, first of all, is what is my competitor doing that's attracting so many of the customers in my area? And then secondly, and why aren't they coming to me?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay, and that also leads in, and by the way, I just wanted to tell our audience I really appreciate your watching us, so my hat's off to you. Okay. But there also is, with market share, there's many different aspects to it. And a business owner could determine, after the proper research and market planning, as we're talking about, that he or she only wants, let's say for argument's sake, a 10% market share, but within the 10%, they have maybe a very high value product.
Correct.
Compared to the competition,
Right.
with high margins. So that takes us into the next point on the workbook, understand your customers, right?
Right.
And also, I know you want to talk about, and we want to talk about, so let's say I know I want a 10% market share, but that's going to really work well for me because I have a unique selling proposition.
Right.
So let's talk about that.
Right. You may have seen the term USP,
Yeah.
which stands for unique selling proposition. What is it about your product or service that
Different,
sets you apart in the marketplace? What is it that you stand for, and what do you want people to believe about you that they can't necessarily believe about someone else? It's interesting where USP or unique selling proposition came from.
Right.
It was developed by an executive at a large advertising agency back in the 1940s, I believe.
Right.
And his name was Rosser Reeves.
Yes.
Rosser Reeves, it said, the character of Don Draper on the TV show Mad Men was based on Rosser Reeves.
That's interesting.
He was a very dynamic executive. He was one of the top executives there. And he came up with the USP with producing ads, at the time probably radio commercials, not TV.
Yeah.
But the first product he developed a USP for were M&Ms.
Right.
And what was, I bet everyone here knows what their USP is, and you can say it first.
Oh, yeah.
Or, I'll just tell you.
Okay, you can tell them.
Melts in your mouth, not in your hands.
Right.
Well, why is that a unique selling proposition? Because M&Ms had that coating on it,
Yeah.
and up until that point, chocolate candies or candies did not have coating. So if you held it in the palm of your hands or even between your fingers, it melted. And you get chocolate all over your fingers. So Rosser Reeves developed this melts in your mouth, not in your hands, which at the time, no competitor could make that claim.
Right.
And thus, it was their unique selling proposition.
Yeah.
Right?
And the other part of that, seminal unique selling proposition, which is really, really important, is the way that they expressed it. I mean, there was this great, pithy catchphrase that we remember, 60, 70 years later. It sticks in your head.
Right. And there are others, I don't remember the exact quote, but for instance, Geico is, 15 minutes, I think it's, 15% in 15 minutes or something like that.
Right.
So what their unique selling proposition is, you know how much you're going to save, and you know how little time it's going to take.
Right.
And again, that will only be with Geico. You're not going to get that ostensibly from competitors.
Right. And another example, and we happen to be recording the show in the Peekskill Cablevision studio, and just down the block virtually is New York Presbyterian Hospital, which 10 years ago was one of the very first to come up with a hospital unique selling proposition when they advertised the no-wait ER.
Right.
People were used to going to an emergency room waiting for hours, and they said, no, you'll be be seen in 15 minutes. So that's a unique selling proposition.
What's important about a USP is that you continue to live up to that promise, whatever it might be.
Right.
So if you start to fall short of what your unique selling proposition is, and you're not living up to the promise, it's going to hurt you in the long run.
Right. And another useful, I think, definition, let's say, of USP in terms of what it isn't. You mentioned Geico, which of course is, had the most successful ad campaign in recent memory with the Gecko.
Right.
You know, and so I know you corrected me before about something. So what you're saying with unique selling proposition is the 15-minute proposition.
It's not the Gecko.
It's not the Gecko,
It's not the Gecko.
which is the mascot.
Right.
Yeah,
Or the spokes Gecko.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So now, in terms of continuing on the track of understanding your customer, I think something that's really significant to talk about a little bit, Bruce, is what it says here in the market planning workbook, the brief, is identifying customer segments that have the greatest business value for your company, which goes back to what we were saying before. It's, you know, the cliche, which is so true, you can't be all things to all people.
Right. And that's why most products are, the marketer has decided this is the audience that I want to reach. But I'll give you an example, since we're speaking here mainly with local businesses. I'll give you an example of a company I dealt with a while back, which was a company that provides residential carpet cleaning services.
Okay.
And this specifically involves the audience or the customers he wants to reach. He said, I only want to reach people who have $1 million and above homes.
Okay, right.
Okay?
Yeah, that's his market segment.
That's his market segment. He decided, I don't want to mess around with a $299 whole house cleaning where I'm not going to be making a lot of money.
Right.
I want to deal with people for whom money is no object, for whom the expensive carpets or the Persian rugs that they might have are so valuable that they don't want to take chances. And we want to demonstrate that our mindset is the same as our customers, that we know you care about the value. Okay, we're going to take extra care. And basically, and this is part of marketing, it's how you position yourself to attract the market segment that you want. Market segmentation also involves other types of demographics. For instance, when somebody in our age group watches TV, we're primarily watching TV shows that are aimed at our age group.
Yeah.
And what we see are advertisements that other people may never ever see. And I'll give you an example. If we're watching TV, certain TV programs, within 1 hour, we're likely to see a Viagra or a Cialis commercial. Okay?
Right.
That's the nature of the beast. Our kids, who are in their 20s, never see those commercials.
Right.
Maybe sometimes, but not with the frequency that we do.
But you're saying because they're not watching
Because they're not
shows
watching
that,
what we do.
Right.
You're not going to see a Cialis commercial on Dora the Explorer. I can guarantee you that, or on shows on Nickelodeon or on MTV or on Spike or on television programs that are aimed at that audience.
Right.
Same is true of pharmaceutical products.
Right, but you and by the way, just again to show the other side of it, but you will see it, for example, on maybe Lifetime or even ESPN.
Right.
But there's a lot of people I know in our generation that watch sports. So.
Right, but for example, watching sports or television shows that are aimed at a younger audience, let's say 16 to 24-year-olds.
Right.
You can see a lot of video game advertising on there.
Yes.
We
right.
never see video game advertising.
Right. Well, again, I'll see it every so often because you see it on ESPN.
Right.
ESPN's demographic is like huge,
but,
is wide.
That's why with segmentation, and we talked about this in an earlier episode of this show, way back when there were 3 television networks, you couldn't segment your market the way you can now. You had to reach the broad spectrum of viewers.
Right.
And marketers then knew that I understand and accept that only a portion of the dollars I'm spending is going to be reaching the right people, and it's worth it. But I can't exclude from my marketing or advertising, I can't exclude all the other people who will never be my customers because they don't fit into my customer profile.
Right.
Okay?
And remember, you and I do remember when cable first came on the scene. At the time, as you said, there were 3 national networks, and that was broadcasting. And when cable first came on the scene, what was it called? Narrowcasting, right? Because you were narrowly reaching just a specific part of the audience.
And the same thing applied to the magazine publishing business when there was Life, Look, Saturday Evening Post, Time, Newsweek, U.S. News. Those were all, although they were aimed at adults, they were aimed at the broad adult reading population.
Mass circulation magazines.
What followed that in the magazine publishing world were special interest magazines. So you had boating and yachting and car and driver and road and track, etc. Think of all the different hobbyists that there are. So there were magazines devoted to chess and only reaching people who were interested in chess. So all of a sudden, by being able to narrow your market through one medium, you didn't have to worry so much about all those dollars that were wasted on people who weren't interested. And now, of course, we've gotten to the point with a service like Google where you can get right down to the people who are almost ready or ready to buy.
What you're selling.
Buy what you're selling. And this is all, this is all part, and just to make this clear, these are a lot of the things that you have to look at in creating a marketing plan. A plan to grow your business, and let's say some people do, the Russians used to do 5-year plans, but let's deal with a 1-year plan. And by the way, it doesn't just have to be market share that you're focusing on. You can say, I don't care about market share. I care about increasing my revenues by $2 million. So the questions, where am I now, where do I want to be a year from now, and how am I going to get there, might be, I'm doing $1 million in revenue now, and by this time next year, I want my revenues to go to $1.5 million.
And then, as you say, and then you have to figure out, and what am I going to do to make that happen?
What do I have to do to grow my business by 50% in 1 year without going out of business? Because you have to realize you're going to have to spend money to make money in various marketing vehicles, which there are many choices of.
Now, it says again in the marketing workbook, market planning workbook, identify the smallest number of distinctive segments. Why is that?
Because you cannot, you will have difficulty defining your market if it's too broad. Okay, in other words, farmers and office workers, because they may fall into a broader category, it's too big. Because the way you appeal to farmers is not necessarily the way you appeal to office workers or accountants or whatever it might be. So you really want to narrow it to a few segments, parents and children, for instance. Now, theoretically, advertising for cereal, for breakfast cereal, can be aimed at parents, and the advertising may focus on nutritional value of the cereal. Whereas another approach, another market segment, are the kids. So whether it's Lucky Charms or Cocoa Puffs or Honey Nut Cheerios or whatever, with the kids you're going to have a different approach. So they're part of your market too. In that sense, what you want to do is influence the kids to demand from their parents that they buy that cereal.
And as you're saying this, it brings back to me, I don't remember the exact way it was stated, but I do recall that there's some kind of a expression, like an ad agency expression, that type of thing, slang. It's almost like an apron tugger, meaning just what you're saying is like the idea is the kids watching the show, and I want that. They go over to mommy and they tug on the apron, saying mommy, and so it gets her attention. So that's what you're saying. It's to both of them.
So
but she's the one spending the money.
The segments may be men. Maybe men and women, and those are 2 segments. You also may have segments like young couples with starter homes, and middle-aged couples who have lived in a home for a number of years. One segment is just starting out with getting furniture and getting their home set up. The other market may be 20 years older. They started that journey 20 years ago,
Right.
but now you may want to focus on them because it's time to replace that furniture. They've
Right,
had it for
right.
20 years.
Right, that's the life cycle,
So
yeah.
and that marketing and that advertising may be different toward that group
Right.
than it is for the people who are just starting a new home and have to furnish it.
Right, which reminds me, and this is really germane to any discussion of marketing, because Bruce and I were both involved for many years in the entertainment business, specifically home entertainment, and we dealt with movie studios. And which studio was always regarded clearly for the longest time as the gold standard in marketing, Disney.
Right.
And with Disney's animated classics, which in the past 2 or 3 decades they of course greatly expanded
Right.
into all kinds of other live action films. But with the animated classics, they had figured out every 7 years there's going to be
Right.
a new, based on the fact there's going to be 7-year-olds
Right.
who were
Right.
born 7 years ago.
But you bring up an interesting point with Disney and a brand.
Right.
How many of you go to a movie because it's made by Fox or
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Columbia
right.
or
Right.
Sony?
Disney is the only.
or Paramount. Disney is the only movie studio,
Right.
and this is the way they've branded themselves.
Right.
And people, and we're sure that you have an image, you, the audience, have an image of what Disney represents
Right.
to you in the marketplace, where you have no such image with all the other major
Pretty
movie
much all
studios.
the, yeah, right.
Back when MGM was doing a lot of musicals in the 1930s and 1940s,
You could say the
you
same
could make a
thing.
case for people going to see an MGM movie because MGM stood for those lavish Busby Berkeley type of musicals.
And in fact, to your point, the brand was MGM Musical. That's what it was. It was an MGM
Right,
musical.
right,
That's- yeah,
right.
exactly.
So that's it's important in marketing to establish what your brand represents in the marketplace, and that's one of the first tasks is asking yourself, what do I stand for, and what is the perception of my product or company or service among my present and potential customer base. Why is it that there are some people out there that might say to themselves, I'm never going to do business with that company? Why?
Right, right.
And then what do I have to do to change their perception of my business,
Right.
so that I can gain them as customers?
Right, to move the ball, so to speak.
Right.
Yes, right. Okay, well, we are running out of time, and there's a lot more we're going to be talking about in subsequent shows.
What we're going to be talking about, in future shows, are the exact steps that you have to take to develop a marketing plan for your business. Very often, this is something you can do by yourself. Other times, it's better to bring in a professional who can look at your business more objectively than you can and help guide you along on that plan.
Right, exactly,
Right.
yeah. And just, quickly, we'll just mention that among the topics that we're going to be talking about in future shows, define your marketing goals, build a results-driven budget, position your products, create effective messages, select media, et cetera, et cetera. So, until then, thanks very much for watching, and this is Bruce and Bruce saying we'll see you next time on Main Street Marketing Challenge.